Shalom, guys. Welcome back to another episode here at Just Shavyu Ministries with Casa de Israel Yarah. Like I always say, thank you for being there. Today, we're going to introduce Abram, right? We have been in the book of Bereshit, Genesis, and we are at the point where we have understood creation. We have been focusing on the purpose, the meaning, the embodied truth of creation and humanity, right? Adam, and how we are trying to put ourselves and become that piece that is missing from the design, that is finding its way back to what the garden described. And so here we will focus on a little bit of review from last year, and I will also at the end will put the video from last year so you can review. We're gonna touch different points, same information, ancient Near East, and the perspective, and how we're understanding this calling that introduces the Father to our faith, and not only to our faith, but even Christians, Jews, of course, and then also even Muslims, right? They have Father Abraham as the pillar of their faith. So why, right? Why is this man chosen, and how is he chosen, right? The narrative is very direct and has a specific message. So we will get to it, and then I will always let you be free so you can enjoy your Shabbat with your family. So let's get started. So this week's Torah portion starts in Genesis chapter 12, Lech-Lecha. Right? And so this is a calling of Abraham. Right? Abraham will be called by Adonai. And before we do anything, let's do a Torah blessing. ברכו אדוני הבורא, ברכו אדוני הבורא לעולם הבא, ברכו אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. Bless Adonai who is blessed, blessed Adonai who is blessed now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and has given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen. So we're gonna go into Genesis real quick. It says, "Vayomer Adonai el Abram or Abraham, Lech-Lecha me'ar zecha umim moledetecha umim bet abicha El Haaretz Asher Arecha." And in English, it says the following. Now the Lord said to Abraham, "Go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. And so you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed." So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his nephew, and all their possessions which they had accumulated, and the persons which they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. Thus they came to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land of as far as the side of Shechem and the oak of Moreh. Now the Canaanite was then in the land. The Lord appeared to Abraham and said, "To your descendants I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Then he proceeded from there to the mountain of the east of Beth-El and pitched his tent with Beth-El on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. Okay, so we're going to jump into the PowerPoint quick and efficiently. Lech-Lecha. Genesis 12, verse 1, 17:27. The prophets, Isaiah 40, verses 27 to 41, verse 16. And the Moreh and Beth-El portion, John chapter 8, verses 51 to 58. Okay? Now, before we get to Noah or to Abraham, we're going to talk about Noah. Right, Noah last week we saw that the portion closes with the Tower of Babel. So it's a little review from last year. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words, and it came about as they journeyed east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And so I explained last year that Shinar, it is an area in the ancient Near East text referring to Summer or Samaria, or the area in which Uruch, Eridu, and Ur are, which is where Abraham is from, is also called Mesopotamia. Now, here is a very important element to focus, right? So it says, they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. Let us make for ourselves a name, otherwise we will be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. And so I talked a little bit about this last year, but obviously we're going to take a different perspective, right? So here there is a narrative that is being structured, and so there is a transition from here to Abraham, right? And so we went from Noah, righteous, walked with God, and then we go from there. We see how God chooses him, and then there is a fall again, right? So there was chaos, order, chaos, and now here humanity is focusing on something very interesting, right? Because they build a city, and so in ancient culture, the city and the tower, which is the ziggurat, which was I speak of that in the last year's video, is a stair or an element to provide the god a way of coming down, right? That's why when they build the city and they build the stairs, which is right next to the temple, it is for the god, the deity, to descend, right? And so the idea was that they were going to do this to make a name for themselves, which eliminates the focus that we're trying to establish, which is how do we find our meaning in creation, right? So here creation, just like Adam did, chose, instead of attaching itself to God's will and the purpose, they wanted to not only take the purpose and manipulate it to make a name for themselves, right? And so here Adonai is saying, okay, you, just like in creation, are focusing on being God, right? In the sense that they build this tower so that they can manipulate the deity, right? Because when you go into the ancient Near Eastern culture, you see that these towers are for the gods to descend, so they can eat, they can enjoy their sacrifice meals and their offerings. And so the idea is city, temple, contain the deity, and so they make their names great, right? And so in narrative, it's like, okay, heaven, and the idea that we're trying to put is heaven informs, earth expresses or manifests heaven, and heaven covers. In this case, earth is becoming heaven, right? And is becoming heaven not by the authority of God, but by the imagination of a man's heart. Okay? And so the idea of men was not to make God's name great, but to make their name great. Right? And so they were using the vehicle of the tower to establish this. And so God is like, okay, I will use this stair, right? That's why it says, let's go down, because the ziggurat, the function of it is for the deity to come down, right? And so God, in their intention, says, okay, I will definitely come down, but I will scatter your idea, right? And so from there, we jump to Abraham, right? And so, but before we get to Abraham, there is a narrative which expresses how we get to Abraham, right? So it says, now these are the records of the generations of Terah, which is Abraham's father. And Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor and Haran became the father of Lot. And interesting, it says Haran died in the presence of his father, Terah in the land of his birth, in Ur of the Chaldeans. Abraham and Nahor took wives for themselves, and then the name Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Isaac. Sarai was barren; she had no child. Terah took Abraham's son, his son, and Lot, son of Aran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son's Abram's wife, and they went out together from Ur of the Chaldeans in order to enter the land of Canaan, and they went as far as Haran and settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. And so I put this map so we can see Ur and Haran, right? So this is the track that they would have taken, right? This is summer, right? Shinar, where everything is taking place. And so we have the call of Abraham, right? Leave your country and your people and your father's household, right? And why does God ask Abraham to leave this behind, right? One reason may be that it is by these three connections that one related to a deity. The gods one worship tended to be a national or city god or country, and the clan god, which is the family or ancestral gods, that is the ancestors who have taken a place in the divine world, the father's household. As Yahweh served the ties of Abram would have had with other deities, he then filled the resulting void as the only God Abraham would need. And so, and I elaborate a lot more, like I said in last year's video, when it comes to the family deity, state deity, and all those ancient Near Eastern elements. And so here, God is saying, leave basically everything that you are for me, and I will become who you are, right? And I will inform you of everything you will do from now on. And so it is a drastic change because Abraham, by faith, has to leave everything he has and everything he knows behind to follow this God. And it's very interesting because Stephen in Acts explains that Abraham was called by God first in Mesopotamia, right? So it's a very interesting statement from Stephen. So we will continue. Also, God says, I'll make you a great nation, right? So this offer is unique in ancient world. One can certainly find offers by deities to make someone king and to prosper their line, or even a promise that a particular individual will have many offspring. But the prospect that an individual will grow into a great nation is not broached in any other literature from the ancient world. After God says, hey, leave everything you have, then God says, I'll make you a great nation, right? So here God is establishing or giving Abraham an offer, right? So he's saying, listen, I got you. I will provide a nation, right? A great nation will come from you, which is interesting because, right, remember, we went from the Tower of Babel where men created a city, created a tower. They desired to create a great name for themselves, and God says no, right? Because remember, the idea of men is going back to the garden. And so they were recreating that in the Tower of Babel, okay? Understand, they created a city and a tower, which was always next to a temple, okay? And so they were creating that sacred space, and they were trying to create sacred space again, but in their own way, based on their name. And God is saying, no, through Abraham, I will create my sacred space, and I will establish my my standard and my stipulations for this. And so here becomes a slow and gradual evolution of how God wants to not only establish his people, but how he will establish his sacred space and bring us back to order again, but now is slow, right? Okay, so here it also says, I will make your name great, which is an offer that stands in contrast, like I said, with the desire of the city and the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11. They had embarked on an initiative to establish their name, whereas here it is Yahweh's initiative that will result in Abram's name being magnified. Every aspect of this offer explains the ways that Abraham's name will be magnified because a person's name is exalted through remembrance. All peoples will call Abram their ancestor and will recognize him as the one through whom their blessings have come. And this is very important in faith. Like every faith, biblically sound, understands that everything came from Abram, right? And it's very interesting because it ties to the covenant. The covenant is very important because it says the covenant, though the agreement between the Lord and Abraham is not termed a covenant until chapters 15, 18, verse 18. The first articulation of the general terms of the covenant occurs in chapters 12, verse 1 to 3, right? Because here God is the prologue, right? And in the prologue, God is saying, leave everything for me, and I will make you a great nation. I'll give you a great name, and I will prosper you, and I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Okay? And so it's very interesting because this deity directly approaching Abram, which is a revolutionary thing, because a relationship like this is not had because, remember, the deities of the other nations are not real. Okay? And so this deity, which is the creator, right, described in Genesis, who speaks to Noah, now is with Abram. And so how is it that the creator is approaching a man and offering him his representation directly, right? Which is interesting. So it says, though the monotheistic worship of Yahweh is a clear distinctive for Israel in contrast to the peoples of the ancient world, more distinct yet is the covenant relationship between God and people. Israel's self-identity here viewed of history, her belief in her destiny, and her understanding of the attributes of God, which is holy and faithful, her understanding of her obligations to God, articulated in the Torah, and the basis of the prophetic institution, all derived directly from the covenant. In each of these areas, despite of existence of similarities with the rest of the ancient world, the covenant marks the departure and underlies the uniqueness of Israel. Gods in the ancient world may have been viewed as personal gods who undertook the protection of the family, but they did not make covenants. The covenant targets the most essential elements of the identity. In the value system of the ancient Near East, land was connected to one's survival, livelihood, and political identity. Family linked the past, present, and future, offering one's most basic sense of identity, or more so than self. An inheritance fixed one's place in the family and ensured that the generations past will be remembered in the present and the future. When Abraham gave up his place in his father's household, he forfeited his security. He was putting his survival, his identity, his future, and his security in the hands of the Lord. And this is an element that I have spoken to the youth, because I phrase it this way. It is God saying, give me a chance, right? And not begging, but saying, give me a chance and give my word in my structure a chance, right? Put it to action, right? Instead of consistently questioning and fighting it, take the words where it says, وَيَدَبِرَ Adonai El Moshe, right? That statement, that phrase says that God is speaking. And if you put those words into action, he says, I will make you a great nation and will manifest myself through you. Obviously here, Moses is not in the picture, but the instruction is there for Abraham. And Abraham's decision to act upon this, manifest this God's will. And God says, through your action of manifesting my word, I'm able to fulfill my end of the bargain or my end of the covenant, because that is the beauty of the covenant. The covenant is you are in covenant with me, but I am in covenant with you. You fulfill your end of the covenant, and I will fulfill my end. As you manifest me, I manifest me through you. Which is the beauty of this, because this human or man or family relationship with a deity is not anything compared to the ancient Near East, because not only this deity, right, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, is having a relationship with Abraham, but he's saying that he will have a relationship with his descendancy. And you see it in the following books, right? And the only element that separates the deity, which is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, in our faith from the people, is the people's inability to fulfill his word. Because whenever his word is fulfilled, one way or another, God is manifested in favor and to the people. Okay? And so, for Abraham, for this introduction to the father of the faith, we see how men's desire to make his name great, which is something that we live today, right? The Tower of Babel is like, the concept of it is exactly what we live on today, right? The idea of men replacing God, or the idea of men figuring out God, and to an extent becoming him to cancel him out, is vivid and more alive in our times. And God says, if you stand with me and you choose me, just like Abraham did, and you follow Abraham's footsteps and hearing my voice and fulfilling my will, you're part of that great nation that I promise him to be. And he's saying, give me a chance. And yes, in our walk, in our faith, we will have questions and we will have doubts, but we cannot forget that the only way that we will find out if God is real is if we put his words and his commands into action. Because he says, through my word, I manifest myself. And through my word, you represent me. And he says, my word does not come back empty. So, the father of faith is beautiful, because through him we have the ability of having Messiah. Thanks to Abraham's ability to honor God, we have Yeshua. And thanks to Yeshua, I have access to the creator of heaven and earth. So, let's put his words into action. Let's manifest his will, and we'll be good. So, that's all I got. My hair is poking out of this hat. It's like, ooh, it's a lot. All right. Have a great week. Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom. And like I always say, like and subscribe. Thank you for the support. I appreciate it. I don't know everything. I just tell you what I know. And I thank you for listening. I will put the information, the resources, and everything that I use for my teachings, for what I've been using. So remember, heaven informs earth and creation. Creation is supposed to support, meaning manifest what heaven communicates. And once we manifest heaven's will, heaven will cover and protect. Shalom.